4-hour journey. This time it was 2 hours up, 2 hours down. The in-between time was spent, this is all in one day. In-between time was spent basically shooting video. So just running around, but didn't really do any riding at the location. Nonetheless, what was the result of me doing this trip? So went up, did the 2-hour journey. This is upstate New York. I don't even remember the town. Whatever it was, it's upstate New York, 2 hours up. And, you know, I certainly pulled it off. It certainly wasn't torturous. I didn't get up there and, oh man, my wrist, so blah, blah, blah. I think the main negative component probably stems from mainly boredom. And that's not saying the bike is boring. It's certainly not boring, but the run was boring. You know, 2 hours on a bike. Some of it was nice. When I got closer to the location, I think I was on the Merritt Parkway, which is kind of nice. You got some nice sweepers going on and some decent scenery. A couple bridge crossings and things like that. Those are nice. But I think the main thing was the route itself not being interesting. So I don't think there was anything particularly negative that was specific to the bike itself. It was the run that had the negativity. So just not enough scenery to last for 2 hours. And the roads themselves, again, closer to the destination, maybe the last 30 to 40 minutes was kind of nice. Nice sweepers, right? But prior to that, a lot of straight roads, nothing to see, nothing to really do. You're just on the bike. And that's where you get into, are you there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? But once again, wasn't complaining about my wrist or this seat is killing me or the noise on this thing or the vibration, it's ridiculous. No, not at all. Now, with that being said, certainly it's not a perfect experience. The bike was absolutely not perfectly suited for the ride. It just did well enough with the help of some techniques that I use for long distance riding. I would say if I just got on the RC390 and just simply rode for 2 hours without any particular techniques or without respecting the challenge that I was facing, you know, just kind of, oh, I'm just going to go ride for 2 hours, probably would be telling you guys a much different story. And that's why it's interesting to qualify things. You know, when you listen to people tell you their opinions about things, you got to really know the details, because one person doing what I did, and it's not just how they did it, it's also who they are. So physical fitness level, right? Body type. All these things matter. If I weigh 250 pounds, it might be telling a much different story considering the power that the KTM RC390 has or doesn't have, right? And there's other factors as well. But if I didn't use any particular technique, I just got on it and rode it like I think I'm on a Goldwing, which would have been way more appropriate for the type of journey that I was doing. Might be telling a different story. But regardless, what were the actual negative elements regarding being on that bike for 2 hours straight? Well, and the first thing is actually not relevant to the time on the bike, but just something that I noticed. So the mirrors. I kind of mentioned about vibration in the mirrors before, and I kind of alluded to that. It's more so when you're in higher vibration. Higher vibration comes from higher RPM. At highway speeds, that engine's actually powerful enough that you don't have to be too high in the RPM range to maintain, 75, 80 miles per hour. I think I'm at those speeds. I'm probably, I don't know, 5-6 grand or something, which is not crazy for a bike like that. So it's not like crazy buzzing and stuff like that. However, it's enough that there's problems with your mirrors. That's definitely a negative with the bike. Again, this is not a distance thing, because if I was riding for 10 minutes on the highway, I'd have the same issue. So, what does that mean? A lot of problems on the highway with KTM RC390 getting clear images in your mirrors. You can see enough to know what's important. You know, there's a car in my blind spot. There's a guy that's weaving all over the road that's coming up pretty quickly, or, you know, things like that. But is that a cop car? Is that a cop car? You know, it's the little details, right? Because you can see the vehicles, you can see that's a bike, that's a car, but the details are what's missing. You know, is that an SUV or a sedan, right? Is that a police car or is that a taxi cab? Really difficult seeing that. Now, with that in mind, I did a test where I basically rolled off the throttle to get rid of the engine vibrations from the RPM that I was at. And what I noticed is it helped, but it's still lots of vibration in the mirror. Now, keep in mind, this vibration was not enough that I felt the ride was like, oh man, this bike is just buzzing all over the place, you know. No, the vibration, you know, on my body was not such that it bothered me. And the main place that I would see or experience the vibration would be the on the handlebars, but even there, it wasn't anything that was too crazy. I don't feel I have any memories of like, man, you know, that's never been a complaint of mine. The mirrors definitely would be a complaint of mine. It's not something that it's a big deal for me. Like, oh man, every time I ride this bike, I can't see behind me. But it is something that's slightly annoying. You know, I'd like to be able to see clear images of what's behind me. But again, that's the main issue with the vibration, is on the mirrors, which even at idle, so rolled off the throttle on the highway at idle, the vibration from just the road, right suspension and all that kind of stuff was enough. And technically, I mean, at idle there is going to be vibration. It's just that at idle you think it wouldn't be very noticeable, especially at highway speeds. And perhaps it probably really isn't. The vibration that I feel and experience, and that's really messing with the mirrors, probably predominantly the road and suspension. Any vibration from the engine at idle probably is so small that you're not going to experience any of the effects, you know, because again, you got stronger vibration sources going on, right? So that was one thing. Other than that, I can't really say there was anything major. You know, sitting back on the seat for the wider section, right? Not putting a lot of weight on the handlebars, you know, whenever you're stopped and slowing down, you know, dropping your feet down, getting a little stretch going on. All the little long distance tricks that I use were sufficient enough that not a big deal for the trip. Now, what were the effects of this trip? So I did 2 hours up, full day shooting, 2 hours down. What were the effects of it? Now, I don't know how much of this is the fault of the bike and how much of it is just the time, you know. Lack of sleep. Began the trip with lack of sleep, maybe 6 hours of sleep or something or less. Got up super early, did a 2-hour trip, shooting all day, running around, getting this shot, that shot, coordinating different things and thinking about production. You know, I need to get this and that and whatever, right? And then, after a long day of doing that, then I'm going to do a 2-hour trip. What was the result? The result was I was wasted for the whole weekend. So this was a Saturday event. I came home. I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted when I got back home. The Sunday, the next day, pretty much didn't get anything done. I was still exhausted. So it took me a full day to recover. Today I feel much better. But it took me a full day and a quarter, you know, whatever at the end of the day coming back. It took me all of that to fully recover. Now, not from my back was killing me or my wrist was killing me. No, I didn't have any of that stuff. I was just tired, just fatigued. Now, would I have been less fatigued if I was riding a Gold Wing? I would have to say, I'm going to guess and say absolutely. Now, I don't know if that is the case for sure. Obviously, I would need to, try it out and see. But, when it comes to long distance traveling, all these little things add up, right? Noise levels, vibration, even the tricks I was doing with my posture, trying to hold my back, my torso up so I don't have weight on the handlebars, that takes energy, right? Maybe if I was just simply sitting down on the Gold Wing and not worried about my position, I would have expended less energy, right? So arrive much more comfortable and much more or less fatigued. Now, I would need to try that to see if that is in fact the case, but logically I would expect that riding on a more comfortable bike would probably cause me less exhaustion, right? So that is potentially the main factor that I saw with the RC390 in terms of riding at long distances is the fatigue. Now, keep in mind, the more you do long distance riding, it's kind of like, you can't keep going long distances like that unless, I would say, even with an appropriate bike, it's tiring, right? You do these long distance trips, you can't keep doing them and doing them and doing them. Like even before, when I had better bikes for this kind of thing, it's like you go on a long distance trip and then you need to kind of take a break, right? And then you go on another one. But you can't be consecutive weekends. So I believe that's kind of what I did, if I'm not mistaken, because I think the last weekend I just got back. Maybe not. But let's just say the gap between the last trip and this trip was not that wide. So, just working as hard as I do, the hours that I do, then doing that long trip, which was crazy. That was really, really a big deal. I was really drained coming back. And then I've barely been back for a little while. Then I go on another trip. And this time it's a day trip. So 2 hours in the morning, then 2 hours in the evening, all day shooting. That's a lot on the body. So I feel like the last time I didn't come back as exhausted, because the last time I actually added an extra hour to my trip because I wanted to have better roads, right? And I was cool with it. I was almost home, and then I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get off the highway for more interesting roads. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I wasn't exhausted the last time, but I wasn't exhausted enough to say, hell no, I'm not going to add another hour to my trip. Are you kidding me? No, I did that. This time around, no. I was not about to add another hour. I enjoyed the ride coming back. And strangely enough, when I finally got to, pretty much I was home, I would say within 20 minutes of home, 10 minutes of home, I stopped somewhere to pick up some items. And I was getting into my tunes, and I got into this second wave of energy where I was just like, I wanted to have fun. I wanted to go out and ride and, really ride. But I was like, dude, you've been on a long trip. Go home. You got your luggage on. Like, just go home and you've had your ride. You had your fun today. So interesting that happened. But I was not thinking that on the way home. Right. At first, it was cool, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe an hour and a half or so, I was just kind of like, are we there? Are we there? Again, not in pain. That was never the issue. Just kind of, I think, boredom, ultimately, was the major factor. Anyway, this is your Fast Life Motorcycle channel. This is another podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, click on the like button, subscribe. If you're not subscribed already, smash that bell. And on that note, I gotta go eat my lunch and get back in the office. Got a lot of stuff to get done today. Shiny side up. This is your Fast Life Motorcycle channel. Yeah.